Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fantasy Baseball Advice with Alek Pecano. Let's get to it. Here are my players of the first half. My first player of the first half is Jose Siri from the Tampa Bay Rays. His slash line was his average was 216 and his OPS 777 with 16 home runs, 37 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases. My second player of the first half is Corbin Carroll, rookie outfielder from the Arizona Diamondbacks. His slash line was average 289 with a 915 on-base percentage, 18 home runs, 48 RBIs, 26 stolen bases. And now let's get to my waiver wire. The first portion of the waiver wire, you'll see that I did put the roster rate of how much rostered these guys are. My second one, I didn't get the chance to, but let's get into it. So, my waiver wire players to add that are available in under 75% of leagues as I play on ESPN for the most part. Number one is Jeimer Candelario from the Washington Nationals. The reason I have him on the waiver wire, this is the first time I've talked about him. I think he's a prime trade candidate, and he might go somewhere where either he could get more playing time or he may be in a platoon. But right now he's on the Nationals, and he's getting a lot of at-bats with Washington. And if you need just hits, RBIs, he'll give you some home runs, but he doesn't have a lot of power. I would recommend adding Jeimer Candelario. My number two waiver wire player for part one is Mariners rookie pitcher Brayan. As you can see on the board, he is 16.3% rostered. And if you need help with pitching, if you've been playing the waiver wire and Brian Wu is available in your league, go add him and see what happens. As I've added him in a couple of leagues, and he's had a couple of good starts in the last 2 weeks. And to piggyback that, there's another guy from the Mariners I would also add. His name is Bryce Miller. I don't have his roster rate in front of me, but he's a rookie. If you have an IL spot in your league, go pick up Bryce Miller and stash him on your IL, in one of your IL spots, however many IL spots you have, along with picking up Brian Wu. The number three guy I have for the waiver wire part one is Reds rookie infielder, because he plays shortstop. He'll play some second base. Is McClain of the Reds. As you can see on the screen, he is 36.4% rostered. And take into account these guys, I made this segment. I don't know if their roster rates have went up or went down. I haven't looked. But take into account these guys can help you. As right now we're at the All-Star break. So if you add these guys from waivers, you'll have to wait till, I think the first game of the second half is Friday for everybody. I think. I could be wrong. There could be a game Thursday. But if you add these guys, expect them to help you in the second half. Back to Matt McClain. He has over a 300 batting average since being called up from AAA. And the next guy I'm going to talk about is Matt McClain's teammate, outfielder Tj Friedl. As you see, and I think, in my opinion, he is widely under-rostered in fantasy baseball. It doesn't matter if it's ESPN, Yahoo, Fantrax, whatever website you play on for fantasy baseball, go add Tj Friedl. He will give you home runs. He will give you, I don't know, he might not give you average if you play in a roto league, but he'll give you home runs, RBIs, stolen bases. He'll walk from time to time. And I've added him. I had to drop him a couple times because there's other guys I had to pick up, but then I've re-picked him up. And one of my leagues, we do it where you get 2 wins or 2 losses, and he's helped me get, I'm 11-1 because of him. So that's coming from somebody that has Tj Friedl on one of their fantasy teams. The next guy I'm going to talk about in this portion of the waiver wire is Braves starting pitcher Mike Soroka, or as he goes by now, it's not Mike anymore. It's Michael Soroka. He is another guy that is severely under-rostered. If you had him prior to when he was sent down, he was not good. But then they sent him back down to AAA. And he came back up, and his first start back, he looked like pre-injury Mike Soroka. He was striking out guys. He was getting a lot of swing and miss. And I'm going to make a prophecy here on this show right now. When I do this the next time, the weekend recap, waivers, which is going to be in 2 weeks from today, I want Michael Soroka to be at least 25 to 30% more rostered in fantasy baseball, no matter what format, what website of fantasy baseball you play on. And the last guy I'm going to talk about in the waiver wire portion, part 1, is a guy that recently returned from injury, and Tarik Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. Young arm, very live fastball. He is only 14.6% rostered, and that's because he's made, I think it's 2 starts. Go add him. He will be a league winner. He will help you win games in the second half of your fantasy baseball season. I promise you. If I'm wrong, I have a portion at the end of the show where I have my social media accounts. You can add me there, and you could call me out and say that I was wrong on Tarik Skubal not helping you win your fantasy baseball leagues. But if he does end up helping you win, you can still message me and say, Alek, thank you for giving me the advice to go pick up Tarik Skubal and add him to help me get wins in the second half of the season. Moving on. I have a drop-o-meter again, backed by popular demand. I have 3 guys this time on the drop-o-meter. First guy I'm going to talk about, and it hurts me to talk about him, is Rays rookie starting pitcher Taj Bradley. And let me explain how the drop-o-meter works. It goes 1 to 10. 10 being drop him for somebody else, or if there's somebody else on waiver wire you want to pick up and you want to drop the guy. At 10 means go ahead and drop him. 1, hold on. Hold on to him and see what happens. Back to Taj Bradley. I have him at a 4.5, which means I'm skeptical that he can turn it around in the second half. Sorry for that. That Taj Bradley can turn it around in the second half of the season. And if you don't have him and he's available in your league, I would pick him up and stash him on your bench. In another episode, I'm going to tell you 6 guys I would pick up and stash in fantasy baseball prospects and big leaguers. But back to this episode. So, and my number 2 guy now that I have on the drop-o-meter is Mets catcher, young catcher from the Mets, Francisco Alvarez. Again, he's another guy. Originally I was going to put him at a 5 or 6, but if you go look at his stats, he's hit over 10. He's hit almost 20 home runs. He's at 17 right now. So on the drop-o-meter, I have him at a 3.5 out of 10. And I see big things for Francisco Alvarez in the second half of the season. If somehow he is available in your fantasy baseball league, I wouldn't advise that you leave him out on the waiver wire and let one of your league mates pick him up. You pick him up, or if he's on waivers, you put in a waiver claim for him, and you wait and see if you end up getting him. Because, like I talked about some of the guys in the first waiver wire portion, he could help you win a championship in the second half of your fantasy baseball season. And the last guy I'm going to talk about, and this hurts me, as he played for the Rays a couple years ago, is Rockies first baseman Cj Cron. I have him at a 9 on the drop-o-meter, which means you can drop him and not really feel bad about it. He plays in Colorado, which normally means good things, which normally means that you're going to hit a lot of home runs, hit for a high average. The problem I have with Cj Cron is it's not the walk rate. He does walk relatively. His walk rate's decent. It's the strikeout rate. And you know how strikeouts work in fantasy baseball. You get negative points for strikeouts. You get negative points. And Cron strikes out way too much. Way too much. And that's why on the drop-o-meter, I have him in a 9 out of 10. If you feel the need to drop him and pick up, I'll give you an example. If you have Cj Cron on your team and Spencer Torkelson is on the waiver wire, I would insta-drop Cj Cron and go pick up Spencer Torkelson. As Spencer Torkelson has started to heat up and is playing a lot better. And the Tigers, just not to mention, not only did they just get Tarik Skubal back, but they got Riley Green back too, which is going to take a lot of the pressure off of Spencer Torkelson. So, again, if you want to drop Cron, as I have him at 9 out of 10 on the drop-o-meter and for fantasy baseball, If you want to drop Cron and pick up Spencer Torkelson or Ryan Mountcastle, who just came back for the second half of your fantasy baseball season, go ahead and do it. I don't think Cj Cron's going to end up hurting you in the long run if he's on waivers. Now, here are my guys. Do not trade these three guys if you have them on your team, even if somebody gives you a good package. Number one, Wander Franco. Do not trade Wander Franco. And that is coming. I'm a diehard Rays fan. I love me some Wander Franco. Do not trade him if you have him in fantasy baseball, as he will help you win a fantasy baseball championship. And he will help you in the second half of the season win a fantasy baseball championship. And unless it's astronomical, the price somebody gives you for Franco in fantasy, the only way you say yes to a trade from Wander is if you're the one acquiring him in a trade. If you're sending him away, the only way I trade him is if somebody's giving me an Ohtani, a Shohei Ohtani, a Vlad Jr., a Bo Bichette, Trey Turner, maybe Bryce Harper. But other than that, no. Do not trade Wander Franco. He should be one of your untouchables, especially if you play in Dynasty. If you're playing in Dynasty League, do not trade Wander Franco. Now, the next guy I'm going to talk about is another Ray, but it's not the guy you think of when you think about the Rays. It is not Randy Arozarena. I just talked about Wander. It is starting pitcher Shane McClanhan. The reason I say do not trade McClanhan, I know he's been hurt, but he will help you win a championship. He will help you win a championship. He will. And the last guy I'm going to talk about in this segment is Guardians infielder, third baseman, Jose Ramírez. Do not, I don't care what the package that somebody's giving you on fantasy baseball is for Jose Ramírez. Again, unless it's an Ohtani, a Vladdy, Bo Bichette, Trey Turner, Mookie, Manny Machado, Tatis, Soto, any of those guys, if they're involved, included in a package for Ramírez, I would think about it, but there is no way in the world, absolutely no way I would trade Jose Ramírez for them. Absolutely not. And let's take our first small break. We are back to the stream. Here we go. Waiver Wire Part 2. Guys that are under 75% rostered. And the first guy I'm going to talk about, I talked about him the last time. And it seems like some of y'all did listen and pick him up. But he is still very much under rostered in fantasy baseball. And that is Red Sox starting pitcher, Brayan Bello. He's another guy that if you pick him up if you pick him up off waivers right now, he will help you in the second half of the season win your league. If somebody, or if he's not available on waivers, peek around and see who has him in your league and maybe send them a trade offer if they don't think that he can sustain the run he's been on of late. But it has to be a fair trade offer. It can't be lackluster. But like I said, I have him. Bello's the guy I have in a couple leagues. And I've seen what he can do. He can be very helpful, helping you get wins. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys. He is a very good ground ball pitcher. He doesn't give up a lot of home runs either. But now, here's the next guy I'm going to talk about on the waiver wire part 2. It is Rangers. I don't know what you call him because he plays the infield, he plays the outfield, so I'm going to go with utility man. Rangers utility man, Ezequiel Duran. And I don't have him in any leagues, but I have friends that do. And one of them said, Alek, if you do fantasy baseball advice again and you do the waiver wire section, you need to put Ezequiel Duran in the waiver wire section, in your waiver wire segment. Because my friend that does fantasy baseball, he was, I think, 3-6 before he picked up Ezequiel Duran, and now he's in first place. So that's why he told me to put Ezequiel Duran here in the waiver wire section so he can just go pick up Ezequiel Duran and you'll see astronomical. You'll see if you're in like second or last place, pick him up and put him in your lineup for a couple of weeks. Use him as a trade chip to send him off to somebody that's in contention for the fantasy baseball playoffs. Or if he's available in your league and you're at the top of your league, pick him up and stash him on your bench and play the matchups. Play the matchups with him. And you'll see a lot of growth from your team in the win column. That's all I have to say on Ezequiel Duran. The next guy I'm going to talk about, waiver wire, on the waiver wire section part 2, is Mets outfielder Tommy Pham. At one point, the Mets were talking about calling up Ronnie Mauricio, one of their top prospects, which I think they still will at some point. Because prior experience I've had with Tommy Pham is he's a very good outfielder, but he can't hit. He's hot right now. So if I was you, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. If I was you, if Tommy Pham was available, is available in your league, go add him right now while he's hot. While he's hot, go at him. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Blue Jay. He just came back up with the Blue Jays. Is Blue Jays starting pitcher Alek Manoah. And the reason I'm going to talk about him is he's another guy that in the second half of the season, if you pick him up right now, if he's available on your waiver wire, go at him. Stash him on your bench for the second half of the season, which starts on Friday. Like I said earlier, I'm pretty sure. He will help you win games. And the next guy I'm going to talk about is Yankees rookie shortstop, Anthony Volpe. And I don't know why people were dropping him earlier in the season, but look what he's doing now. The kid just can't stop getting hits. He gets 2 or 3 hits every game now. Go pick up Anthony Volpe if you need shortstop help. The only places I wouldn't pick him up is say you have a Lindor on your team or a Correa, a Jeremy Pena, a Trey Turner, a Wander Franco. Don't pick. I mean, you can still pick up Volpe, but he's not going to be in your lineup all the time because you got those guys. If you have a corner infield spot, then you can play Volpe there. I mean, most leagues do have corner infield, but pick him up, and he's another guy that can help you win a championship in the second half of your season. And the last guy I'm going to talk about for the waiver wire portion of this show for this week is Astros starting pitcher JP France. He has turned in, if my math and memory serves me correct, 5 quality starts out of his last 6 starts he's made. He does get a decent amount of strikeouts. But if you're just looking for somebody that gets you points with innings and whip and ERA, with whip, innings, and ERA, JP France is the perfect guy to pick up for you. Now, let's move on. The Fantasy Baseball Today news that I have for you is we have 2 prospect promotions. And one of them is Orioles outfield prospect Colton Cowser, who was called up last week by the Orioles. He started 3 out of his first 4 games for Baltimore. And I think he's going to see regular time in the outfield and at DH. The next prospect call-up was Jonathan Aranda from the Rays. But it's unfortunate because he took the roster spot of Josh Lowe, who had to go on the family medical list. Prayers go out to the Josh Lowe and his family. Hopefully Josh is back after the All-Star break. He had a heck of a first half. But getting back to Jonathan Aranda, he's going to play his first 2 games. He got called up and he was right in the starting lineup. His first game, he went 0 for 3. And then last night, yesterday afternoon, I believe he went 2 for 3 with a 2-run double and a single. He's another guy that I don't know. Cowser, I would pick up and stash on your bench because he's sticking around with Baltimore. Aranda is that's kind of unknown because they could send him back down to AAA once Josh Lowe comes back, which I think that's probably what's going to happen unless Aranda is just raking like he was in the minors. He was hitting 300 in the minors. And I think they're going to give Aranda a long look until Josh Lowe comes back and see what they have because the deadline's coming up. And I could see the Rays using Aranda as trade bait to try to go out and get a starting pitcher. The next bit of fantasy baseball news is that the Cardinals have sent Matthew Liberatore back to AAA. He has had I'll take the L. I thought he was going to be a breakout candidate this year. I will take a massive L on that take before the season. That's why I didn't put it on any social media or YouTube. Because I'd probably get looked at and laughed at now since he's been sent back to AAA a second time. I think if you want to stash him to see if he does get called up in the second half, go ahead. But I don't recommend it, because if he does, he might cost you a championship. And then the last guy in the news section that I'm going to talk about is he just returned to the Blue Jays, like I said a minute ago, and waiver wire. Alek Manoah was called back up to Toronto from AA New Hampshire. The reason the Blue about a month and a half ago, was because he was walking batters left and right, and they wanted him to work on some mechanical things. His first start back against the Tigers, he struck out. He looked like the old Alek Manoah, which is not only trouble for people that pick him up in fantasy baseball that have to play against him, that their opponents have to play against the team that has Alek Manoah, but that's trouble for MLB overall. Because if Manoah's back to what he was before this little issue he had, who knows? He could be a league winner. And the last two segments I'm going to talk about today is my catcher rankings for fantasy baseball, starting with number 15 to number 7. So catcher number 15 for fantasy baseball, I have Diamondbacks catcher Gabriel Moreno. I could have had him higher, but there's some guys that I feel like are a little bit better than Moreno. Number 13, I have Will Smith from the Dodgers. Number 12, I have Wilson Contreras from the Cardinals. Number 12, I have JT Realmuto from the Phillies. Number 11, I have Wilson Contreras' brother, William Contreras, catcher from the Brewers. Number 10, this is a guy I just talked about in the Double-Meter a few minutes ago, is Mets young catcher Francisco Alvarez. And I have him here because, like I said, I feel like he's breaking out finally. And at number 9, I have Reds catcher Tyler Stevenson. At number 8, I have Jonah Heim, catcher from the Rangers. At number 7, I have Rockies catcher Elias Diaz. My top 6 catchers. Number 6, I have Pirates catcher / outfielder Henry Davis. Number 5, I have Cubs catcher Yan Gomes. Number 4, Danny Jansen from the Blue Jays. Number 3, Keibert Ruiz from the Nationals. Number 2, catcher Adley Rutschman from the Orioles. And number 1 is catcher from the Braves, Sean Murphy. And as you can see on the screen are my social media accounts, Instagram and Snapchat. Go follow me on Instagram and also add me on Snapchat. And you can send your comments, you can send questions to either of those social media accounts, and I will answer them. And thank you. That does it for the early episode of Fantasy Baseball Advice today. I have two more shows planned today. I have a show at 4:30, which will cover college football, my Heisman Trophy preseason list, along with 5 players to watch. And then I have a show tonight with my best friend Robbie Colton. We're gonna talk about SEC football, and we might also talk about a couple other conferences too. And But thank you. Please, if you would feel encouraged, please like and subscribe. It would help me get more views on my videos, and it would help me with the YouTube algorithm. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Have an amazing rest of your day.